Okay.
Hi.
Hello. To start off with, would you like to say your name and where you are?
My name is Lenny, Lenny, Ravich, Ravich, and I'm in Tel Aviv, Israel. I was originally born in the United States. First generation, my parents were from the Ukraine. And that's about it. But I watched some of your interviews and you ask, who are you? And then I started to think about that. And I think my answer would be, I'm a journey, because that's what I've been on and it's been my life, and I identify with that. And a very interesting, sometimes disappointing, sometimes painful, most of the time interesting and exciting, watching where the yellow brick road takes me. I never really decided on anything much in my life. I remember I graduated high school with very poor grades. I was a very poor student. And no university, I was from Hartford, Connecticut, no university would accept me anywhere. But there was a college called Hillier College in Hartford that would accept you if you were a retarded chimpanzee, and because it was a night school. And so I went there, and I wanted to see if I could handle college, because I had that sort of like passion. I wanted to study, even though I was a terrible student. And I was put in what they call the business class, where you had to have index cards. It was me and 25 girls, and typing and stuff like that, because it was business. Business means I was going to be a secretary, because didn't have any talent. All my friends were like in engineering, and they were going to be future golf players and stuff. And I was like an outcast, but they liked me because I was funny, and they dragged me along. And they all went to college, and I felt like, hey, I got to do the same thing. Also, my mother told me that I was like 5 years old, I was going to be a doctor. And I asked her why, and she said, because you're Jewish. And other than that, I finally got this passion to study theater. And somehow I got an interview at Emerson College in Boston. And they looked at my transcript and said, you can't be serious. And I said, well, look, I went to college. I didn't tell them it was a chimpanzee college. I didn't tell them it was night school. It's college, Hillier College, and I
right. You get a paper at the end of the day.
I got a C in psychology, and I got a C in English, and I cheated a little bit and got a B in I cheated a lot and got a B in but that's the highest I ever went in business math. And I said, this is what I want to do. I want to go and be in the theater, learn some theater, and perhaps be a radio and TV announcer. Television was just coming up then, back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, television was the thing, live television. Sid Caesar and all these programs. There was no such thing as video like they have today. It was all live. That was exciting. And so they accepted me. And I went to Emerson College and graduated in 1959. But the only way I could go there and to study there, in those days, you could afford to work and pay your way through college. So I washed dishes at Catherine Gibbs School for Girls and got a breakfast, an amazing breakfast that I never dreamed of having. You're a student, you get your bacon and don't tell anybody it's not kosher, but pancakes and oatmeal. And I said, wow, this is amazing. And plus I got $1. So yeah, that was breakfast. And then supper, also wash dishes, another $1. Great meal. And that was, I earned enough money to pay rent and to have my food. And on Saturdays I would sell shoes in town, women's shoes. and had enough money to even go to the theater, which was the first time in my life I had ever attended a ballet, the Ballet Russe. And I was like 19 years old, and I didn't understand why I was crying. I mean, I'm watching this ballet, and I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. I mean, the light. I'd never seen anything. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. I never, the most I ever saw was a ball game. And here I am watching this, the Swan Lake, and I'm bursting into tears, and they're painful tears. It's like, you ask, why do people cry at weddings? I think this is it, just from overjoy, over beauty, over aesthetics. And I realized this is really what I wanted to do. But I had a girlfriend, Gail, and she said, don't study just theater, because nobody needs another actor with a degree. There's nothing like, there's nothing more depressing than an aging actor with a BA in theater. So study English literature. And I said, why? She said, you'll find out. So I started to study English literature, and I really started to love it, really loved it. But I never got good grades. I mean, my grades were like in the 70s, 7, 8. And upon graduation, I got right away a notice from the Army. It was 1959 that I was being drafted. This was before the Vietnam War. And I had the privilege of going to Fort Dix to join the Army, not join, to be drafted the day that Elvis Presley was being released. And so that was, a big deal. I don't know if you remember Elvis Presley, but he was in the United States Army. He got out in 59, and I was going in 59. And immediately after the Army, which was, it was fun. It was fun.
Okay.
I went straight to New York, and with $30 in my pocket. And then, I'm not afraid to work. Because my mother asked me when I was 11 years old to pay rent. We didn't have any money, so she said that you have to go to work. And I said that I can't work at 11 years old because you have to be 16. And my father said, I'll get you a paper route, the Hartford Times in the afternoon to deliver papers. So I got some kind of like a confidence that nothing can stop me. If I want to be an actor, I can work in a restaurant, I can do other things. And it was a real trip. That's why I'm saying it was a journey, because studying acting in New York and meeting the other actors who were kids then, Dustin Hoffman was just a kid. Like he was like around 21, 22 years old. And Robert Duvall. And I had a chance to be in the American Shakespeare Festival, and acted with an actor by the name of Morris Karnofsky, who was one of the biggest Shakespearean actors in those days. So I had a great time. I didn't know these guys. I did know that they were going to make it because there was something about them, Robert Duvall, and also Roy Schneider. I was in a play with Roy Schneider, and he was later in a movie called All That Jazz. Big actor. And so, and of course, you go to acting class, and you might see a girl that looks like Marilyn Monroe, and you find out that it is. These are the things that really excited me. And then one day I decided I'm sick and tired of washing dishes in restaurants for meals, so that I could go to auditions. And I decided I'm going to the Board of Education in New York. For some reason, they were advertising for substitute teachers. They were desperate, excuse me, for substitute teachers. And I went there, and I got a substitute license, New York substitute license, which was perfect, which means I got a call. And can you come in and teach in Brooklyn today? The teacher broke her nose or whatever. And I would say yes. And I would go to Brooklyn and make good money. It was good money in those days. I was living in Greenwich Village. Another little story. I walk into a place called the Gaslight, which is a club in a coffee house in Greenwich Village, and I see this kid playing a guitar. It was amazing. And I walked over to him and I said, you know, you're great. You're going to be famous someday. And he said, we're all going to be famous. I said, what's your name? He said, Bob Dylan. You know, those were the days of Lenny Bruce and all these guys. They were all my age. And so I started teaching. And I thought that, okay, I'll have this job as a teacher substitute that I could always refuse without having to explain anything. I have an audition, I can't come in to teach. Or I'm rehearsing a play right now and I can't come in to teach. And so that worked out beautifully. And I got into what is called summer stock. Now, this is amazing. Summer stock is like a repertory company. In the morning, you're rehearsing West Side Story. And in the evening, you're doing a streetcar named Desire. It's like 18 hours a day work for $25 a week. But it was amazing, especially the chorus line. We won't get into that. And I loved it. When I came back to New York, I was like a professional actor. I had all this under my belt, you know, one show after another, one audition after another. I was like a pro. And I got very depressed. I got into the American Shakespeare Festival, and I acted. I don't know if you remember an actor by the name of Charles Durham. He and I were in the same show together, the 12th Night. And so I got very depressed, and I didn't know why I was depressed. And it was the first time I think in my life that I ever had this kind of depression, because it was very painful. It was painful physically and mentally. My body hurt me, and my soul hurt me. I, you know, had this knife in my chest, like for you know, an entire year, until I realized that something was happening to me that I didn't want to happen, which was I began to love teaching more than acting. I was teaching as a substitute, and I'm fighting that. You know, I don't want to love this. I don't want to love this. I'm an actor. You know, Marlon Brando. I'm Paul Newman. Come on, please. Wind up as a teacher. What do I do with that? So I decided that, okay, there was a program going on at that time. Kennedy was president before he was assassinated. And he had a program called, I forgot the name of it, but you go abroad and you work in some rice paddies, and you learn the language of the people, and you live in a hut, and we become the ambassadors.
Okay.
So they can learn more about American people, how nice we are, and that we don't usually bomb people day and night. Sometimes we're nice. And I decided I didn't want to do that. I wanted to travel and learn a language, but I didn't want to go through that program. And I met by accident a girl who I had finished high school with, and I told her I want to travel, and I don't have the money, and I don't want to just go, you know, start taking selfies at the Eiffel Tower. I really want to stay in a country, I don't care where, anywhere, and learn the language. And she said, well, there is a country, this is back in 1962, I think. And she said, there's a country called Israel. And if you're Jewish, you can get an automatic citizenship, and they'll give you 6 months of learning Hebrew for free. And they'll also give you pocket money. I said, you got to be kidding. A free trip on El Al, getting there, getting a place to stay, a dormitory, teaching you Hebrew, taking care of you as if, you know, it's your mother. And so I said, where is this place, Israel? I didn't know where it was. And you didn't have an iPhone.
Right.
And so I had to go to public library, and I looked up these books, and I said, so give me some maps, and I'm looking at the maps, and I see, I see Turkey, and I see Syria, and I see Greece, and I can't find Israel. Here's Egypt, but then I see you go out to the Mediterranean, and it says Israel with an arrow pointing to a place where it's so small they couldn't put the word Israel in it. And I said, that's it, I'm going. Okay, it's a leap of faith. I'm single, I got nothing to lose. They're going to take care of me. I don't need any money. I don't have to wash dishes. But I didn't know that there was a catch, that I had to work on a kibbutz.
There's that.
Okay, so that was another added factor. So that's why when you ask me, who am I? I'm a journey. One thing just took me to the other. The acting took me to teaching. The teaching took me over to Israel. When I got to Israel, I learned Hebrew, and then I was on vacation in a place called Eilat, which is where Fritz Perls wanted to begin his institute, his Gestalt Institute. He wanted to start there because it was all desert,
right,
and the Red Sea, and then you had one hotel. And just when I got there, he left. I didn't even know anything about psychology. They had 2 courses in psychology. I had never even thought, of going into this. I had respect for psychologists. I thought they were the greatest people, in the world, but I would never see myself as one. And I got to Eilat, and I started to teach in high school there. And I loved it. And it was amazing. And one day, I'm going to tell you a story now. Why do I tell you that I'm a journey? Okay. This is a true story. I'm living in Eilat. I'm single. I'm teaching at high school. And November the 5th, 1965, I get a message, and I don't know where the message is coming from. And the message is, go to the beach, your wife is waiting for you there. Okay. And I don't know if these are words, or, like the sky opens up, go to the beach, why, one of those. It wasn't that. It was a feeling that I know this is true.
Sounds
okay, good. And I put my shirt on, and I go to the beach, because my house is right next to the beach. It's on the Red Sea. It's all desert, and then the Red Sea. It's very hot, but the water's good. And I'm actually sitting there waiting, knowing that she's going to show up. And then I heard her voice. She was speaking. She's an Israeli, and spoke English. And she was some guy was trying to hit on her by showing her a map and saying, "Excuse me, could you show me how to get to?" That's how nice way to pick up a girl. And so I knew that was her. And so I just walked right over to her. There was no thing, when you walk over to a woman, you think, well, will she like me? Will she reject me? Will she tell me to go to hell? There was not. This is my wife. Okay, she can't talk like that to me. Okay, so I walked over to her, and boom, that was it. And there was a guy sitting next to her, but he felt the energy was so strong. If I was in his place, I would have been knocked off my feet. And we started to talk, and I'm laughing. I'm laughing because I'm watching a movie. Okay, she's in the movie, but she doesn't know the plot. And I know the script. I know I'm directing this thing. I can't explain it, but it's like what's going to happen, and she doesn't. So it was like not funny, but entertaining. Looking at it, when am I going to tell her? When am I going to tell her? Should I tell her now? No, it's too soon. She'll think I'm crazy. Okay.
Let her in on the joke sooner or later.
What's that?
Let her in on the joke sooner or later.
Only after I married her, I told her.
Ah.
Yeah.
How long did that take?
6 weeks.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's a story too, because she comes from a religious family, from Spain. There were Jews in Spain during the Inquisition, and they were either murdered or executed or expelled from Spain in 1492 for not becoming Catholic or whatever that. And her family escaped, and they were called the Moranos, and they went straight to Jerusalem.
Mhm.
So she was many generations in Jerusalem, and so it was it's a whole different culture, which it's an amazing. I mean, this was a movie. This was a movie. So that evening, I took her to where she was staying. She was staying with a friend, and I said, "What are you doing tonight?" And she said, "I have plans." And what's going on in my mind is my wife's got plans. I mean, stop it. I said, "You have no plans." Okay. I didn't say you're my wife. I just said, "You're with me tonight. So just be ready at 8 o'clock and stop the nonsense." She said, "Okay." And that was it. She really fell over. I mean, if any movie you watch, this was it. And the very next day, she had to go back to Jerusalem. And so I said, "I'll help you with your bags." And I put her bags on the bus. And then I said, "I can't hold it any longer. I don't want to wait. Go home and tell your parents you're getting married. I'll come up next week, give me your address." And she gave me a telephone number. She said, "Call me." There were no telephones. There were no telephones.
That's complicated then.
Well, it is. I mean, the only people who had telephones were like doctors, the army, police, and her father, who was he was a manager of a post office. So he had to have, he was official. So she got home around midnight. She left and she was in shock. I just leaned over. I was holding the bar like this, Okay, listen, when you get home, tell your parents you're getting married. I'll come up next week. And she looks up at me. She said, you have a picture? And I took out my passport picture. I gave it to her. She said, "Call this number. At midnight, I'll be home." So I called. And first of all, I had to go look for a phone because there was like one or two phones in the entire village. There was a Yossi's fish restaurant, and there's people standing in line, and you have to use a token.
Mhm.
You go ding, and if you hear it just fell, that's it. You didn't get it. You have to try again. And then and it that sort of thing. I called her up. I said, "Come next week," and I flew up to Tel Aviv, and then took a bus from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. She was waiting for me with her brother. Now they have big families. The Sfaradim, it's called Sfaradi, because that's the name of Spain in Hebrew, Sarad. So if you were a Jew expelled from there, you were called a Moranos, and you were Sfaradi. And so the whole trip was interesting to come to her home, which was very, very, very extremely simple. I mean, like a kitchen, 2 bedrooms, and about 11 people, because she has like 9 brothers and sisters, and her grandmother was there, and the parents. But I was like the king of Morocco. I mean, you just walk in and okay, this is where you sit, this is it. And everybody's singing for me, and they're asking the daughters to sing, and each daughter gets up and sings, and this one dances, and this one that, and this one this. And so I said to her father, "When can I talk to you?" And he said, "Tomorrow," which is the Sabbath. And I went and I said, "Open up your diary and tell me when is the soonest we can get married. I've made up my mind, and I don't think we should wait." And he said, "Well, the soonest you can get married," I met her on the 5th of November, and this was something like the 12th. He said, "You have to wait till the 21st of December." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because there's a holiday called Hanukkah, I said, well, write it down and I'll come back on the 21st and get married. And we've been very good friends ever since, 56 years, 3 children, 9 grandchildren. And I had a great time teaching. I really had a wonderful time. And then a war broke out. It was called the 6-Day War, where 4 or 5 Arab countries attacked Israel. I was really scared because, you know, if you're alone and there's a war, okay, but when you've got a family,
Yeah.
you know, you got a child. I had a child die by then. Now my son Nati was born. And, you know, all I can think about was with him, you know, running down to the shelters every time you hear the sirens. And then to come out of that war victorious was a mind blower. By that time, my family contacted me. They wanted to meet my wife. I had a sister and a mother, and their, you know, my father already had passed away when I was in college. They wanted to meet my wife and my son, so they invited us to the United States. My sister was living in Birmingham, Alabama. Okay, so so I leave my job, I leave a lot, and we go through Europe. You know, we're traveling around Europe. We went to Paris and then we went to Rome and Greece, you know, the usual. And then we got to Birmingham, Alabama in 1967. And I'm a teacher, but there's no such thing as a white, male, Jewish teacher in Birmingham, Alabama. It doesn't exist.
Well, there is
apartheid.
now.
Well, yeah, but that was Jim Crow then.
Yeah.
If you're Jewish, you know, or Black, you didn't have a chance. However, this is why everything is like a journey. Because just when I get there, there's a notice from the Board of Education that there's a court order forcing integration.
Mm-hmm.
And they're dying for a white teacher, even if he's Jewish, even if he's male. And there was no such thing. The only male teachers they had were coaches who had to teach history because, you know, for that. But the main thing was the football team or the basketball team. So I get elected to go to a Black school, an all-Black school in Birmingham, Alabama, in a suburb called Powderly, Alabama. And I was the first white teacher in all of the United States to walk into a Black school and high school. And I saw such talent. It was incredible. And I got this background in theater. So I come to the principal and I said, would you like, I don't need any budget because these kids are amazing. Can I direct a play called Guys and Dolls? He said, sure. And so I had auditions, and these kids come out and they do fantastic talent, and they had never done theater in their lives. And it made a big, huge splash all over Alabama, you know, that here we're doing a musical. And there were fights because there were still people with the mentality that you can't succeed with these people. This is impossible. And they succeeded that year, doing a wonderful play. And then the next year, Bye Bye Birdie, and the next year, Music Man, and Our Town. And we just, until one day, the University of Alabama also received a notice that they had to have more diversity in their faculty. So a Jewish guy with a degree in theater or English or whatever I had, would I please come and teach at the University of Alabama? You know, teach theater. Now, the thing is this, I needed a master's degree. So I went to this college called Samford. It's not Stanford, it's Sanford, which is a Baptist university. Okay, now I knew I was getting married to this woman. I knew I was going to study and get my master's degree at Samford. I knew it. There's no way I'm not going to do it. I mean, this is the journey. So I go there and I give them my transcript, and even from college, my transcript like was 78, and they take 84. You can't get in unless you have an 84. So I know I'm going to study there. So stop your BS and let me talk to the president. And they go, president? Okay. Dr. Who is his name? We'll see you on Tuesday at 7 o'clock in the evening. So I walk into his office and I'm just, confident as anything. And he looks at me and he takes my file and throws it at me and said, you have a 78 average, you can't study here. And I said, why not? He said, you need an 84. So I know this is a Baptist university. And out of my mouth, and I don't know how it happened. Okay, sometimes I say things I don't know where they're coming from. But when you know you're going to be doing something and somebody is stopping you, you come up with the most creative thing. And I looked at him and I said, if Jesus Christ were sitting where you are now, would he accept me? And what do you think he did?
Well, that's challenging. That's a challenge right there. You can't
Challenging
say
a
no.
person. Well, yeah, I mean, what is his purpose in life is to be like Jesus. And you're putting him in his place. And so you now have an opportunity to be Jesus. What do you do? And so I saw his body language, and he finally signed, and he said, I'll let you in on. So I got my master's degree in education, went to teach at the University of Alabama. And there it was a dream, because I could direct any play I wanted. I could take an old museum piece like Yerma or Rashomon or anything I wanted. And I had people nobody in the theater department ever had to bring in extra chairs ever. I mean, it was like 8, 9 people in the class, and all of a sudden I'm teaching the class. It's like 40. For some reason, I got this charisma or something. And the people wanted to be around me and be with me and to learn from me. And then one bright day, I told my wife I want to go back to Israel in 1973. We were there from 1967 to 9. And Birmingham, Alabama was amazing. I don't care what people tell you about this place. People are friendly. The place is beautiful. It's comfortable. And everybody would just call me Lenny instead of Lenny. How you doing this morning? You come to see us here. Well, how you doing, Miss Ravich? Everything all right? Yes, sir. Okay, so, I mean, it's the South. I mean, it's, going with the wind. So she says to me, why do you want to go back? Now, she's Israeli and she's enjoying America because, you have a maid for $1 a day or whatever. And I said, because the most important thing for me is family. And your family is huge. And the greatest gift I could ever give my children is to give them a mother, a father, a grandmother, a grandfather. They don't have that here in America. They have my sister. My mother passed away in 72. And that's when I made my decision that all I have is my sister. For them, I want them to have a family. This to me was I don't know how I got that, but I'll go to hell for them to have a family. I will live in hell for them to have a family. And Israel is like just about that, because there's wars every day, there's attacks every day, there's terrorism every day. there's not a day that goes by that you're looking over your shoulder.
Mm.
And so we came back to Israel, and I became an inspector for English teaching. You gonna close the door? Thank you, bye. It's my granddaughter. And so I became an inspector. An inspector is a supervisor. And at the same time, I was directing plays in Hebrew, because I had this experience from the United States, but at the same time, I knew Hebrew, and I was opening up theaters all over the place, because back in the 70s, there were very few theater teachers, and I was like a phenomenon. Being a theater teacher, director, and one day, a friend of mine from Migdal Emek, which is right next to Nazareth, I was living in Nazareth, and he was a psychologist. His name is Noam, and he said, "This is a book by Fritz Perls. You've never read anything like it in your life." Okay, and here I am, like in my 40s, and I read this book, and when people say, "What book affected you the most in your life?" my body just resonated. I mean, every cell in my body was on fire, because it had everything in it. There was theater in it. There was drama in it. There was conflict in it. There was self-conflict in it. There was dealing with your own parts of your own body, using a chair to discuss things with your own self that you didn't know existed, the shadow of you. You are this person, but there's this shadow, and you don't know why you're feeling the way you're feeling, and you don't know why you're experiencing what you're experiencing. And I read this book, and I read it again and again and again and again. I order any book I can get. And I remember ordering Zinker's book and Gary Yontif's book and Poster's book, Irving Poster. And I was just reading and reading and reading, but there was no place to study, because in Israel there was no Gestalt Institute. I met Tali Bar Yosef. She lived in Jerusalem at that time. And we were trying to form a Gestalt group so that we could, somebody would write a paper, somebody would recommend a book. There was no place to study. Mm-hmm. My sister moved from Birmingham, Alabama, with her husband to New Orleans, Louisiana, 1976. And she invites me to come to visit. And I said, "Could you do me a favor? If there's anybody in the Gestalt society community, please introduce me." So I fly in, and she says, "I want you to meet Ann Teachworth. This is Jeff Teacher's mother." And he was a kid about probably his late 20s at that time. And I loved the way she worked, and I studied at her institute. And I said, "You've got to teach me this." I said, "I'm so thirsty. I'm so hungry for this. Give me as many books as you want. I'll read them all. I'll write papers, anything. I've got to study." And she took me into an institute, and she herself told me, "You have a great potential. You have a great potential." And what I liked about her was that she also taught. She had her individual clients, but she also taught. This attracted me very much, because I got my teaching from her, my certificate, and came back to Israel and wanted to do the same thing. But I was afraid to do it alone. I didn't have enough confidence to do it myself. I never studied psychology. So I met this woman, Susie, who told me that she studied psychology. I said, do you know anything about Gestalt? And she said, nah. I said, look, there's only one way we're going to learn this. At that time, I think Bob Resnick came, Rita Resnick came, and they were doing groups, and I was starving. It was anything that, Zinker came, Poster came, Gary Yontef came, Lynn Jacobs. I know Lynn Jacobs was a wake up for me because all the other Gestaltists were imitating Fritz Perls and were confrontive. And I can't take confrontation. I'm not a confrontational person. She was way into Martin Buber. The I vow, the getting into your world, no criticism, no comparison, no judgment. It was all okay. And she even said to me once, I was working with her, and I'll never forget, I felt anger. I never knew what anger was. I would never accepted my anger. In my family, you just didn't get angry. You just didn't. It was a sign of disrespect. So she said, I see a red flag. She said, it's not only a red flag, it's a red cape. Because there's a bull coming at me. And that was the first time I felt met. I'm not saying all the others weren't fantastic. Bob Resnick and his wife and Zinker and all the others, they were marvelous. But they didn't have that place of meeting you where you needed to be met. She had it, and Yontef had it, Gary Yontef. Gary Yontef was a blessing. He was an angel. Rita Resnick was an angel. Bob Resnick is very confrontational, angel, but he was good. I mean, he knows how to zing in, but that wasn't for me. I didn't want to be zinged. I wanted to be met. So they became my teachers. Wherever they went, I followed them. I went to Gary Yontef was with Bob Resnick in 1991. In Europe, they were doing an intensive, 8-day intensive. And I went there to study with them. And then I invited in to Israel myself. I made a phone call to Zinker and said, please come in. We need there are people here who are interested in Gestalt therapy, and we want you to come and teach us. And I got my dream because I opened up an institute called the Gestalt Institute of Haifa with Susie. And we were packed because people didn't know what psychology was, that you could actually meet a person on a human level. It was all analysis. You sit there and you talk like for about an hour, and then, okay, you dreamt about the elephant, which is your father, and the elephant's ears are your mother. You're going into these interpretations. You're not met. You're not a human being. You're a thing being analyzed. It's like lying on a slab. Okay, he's got. This is the mind. This is the soul. You can't do that. And I saw that the way Gary worked, the way what's her name again? Lynn Jacobs worked. It was like, I exist. I'm present. And this is what I want. Now, what happened was, since I was working at the Board of Education, I got to know some people there, and I said, I would like to teach teachers this method, I think teachers could use this. Because it's not just coming into a class, okay, everybody open your books to page 41. It's, contact, making contact, engaging your students before you start doing the 2+2 stuff. If you really want to teach, fall in love, have them fall in love with you. How do you do that? And this was the way that I thought I could make an impression on the Board of Education. What happens in Israel, you have the union that gives teachers every 7 years a sabbatical. They can go and learn anything they want, and they get a salary, plus they get money to study what they want, what they need to study. Now, the usual inspector would say, yeah, okay, she's going to be an English teacher, so then she has to go and study English. She's going to be a math teacher. She should go. And I'm going, no, they don't need math. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to teach 3rd grade. Hello. Let them learn how to make human contact.
Mm-hmm.
Let them learn Martin Buber. Let them learn Fritz Perls. Let them learn what it means to make contact with another human being on a deeper, authentic level of vulnerability and intimacy. So we were very successful. Teachers all over the country wanted to study with us. And we made a lot of mistakes. We made a lot of business mistakes as well as professional mistakes. But when I look back and I say, okay, we hurt a lot of people and we made a lot of mistakes. However, I couldn't have come to where I am without those mistakes. Because when I was in therapy myself, I was also with a Gestalt therapist. Her name is Galia Rabinovich. She teaches at the University of Tel Aviv. And she was my therapist for 3 years. And suddenly in 1993, Susie came to me and she said, Lenny, I'm going to tell you this. But okay, this is the journey, all right? You don't know what's going to happen. You're just on the yellow brick road, and suddenly things start to come up. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz. And she says, you're funny. And people walk out of here laughing. She said, I've been to Gestalt groups where people would be crushed. And here they're walking out optimistic. They're laughing. Can you teach people how you do this? I said, no, I don't know how I do it. Would you take the chance and open the very first in the world Gestalt humor and laughter? And I got scared out of my mind, scared to the point of pain in every cell of my body. And I said, I have to do it because I know that if I'm scared, that means I got to do it. Because the moment I am not afraid anymore, there's no sense.
Yeah. There's no growth.
There's no growth. Okay. And I opened the first one, which was terrible. I admit it was horrible. I mean, it started out with 50 people. I came the next day, it was a weekend, and came the next day, there were like 12 left. People just walked out. But then I began to get invitations of other therapists wanting to learn the method of, and I said, I don't know how I do it, but what I can do is find out where the humor is in you. Whatever capacity of humor you have, you can't be me. I can't teach you to be me, but I can teach you to find out where the humor is in you, how you are blocking it, if you are, how you are denying it, if you are. I even had a woman walk out of my class And I chased her down the corridor and I said, Dina, where are you going? She said, you're not serious. I said, what do you mean? She said, therapy is serious. And you're making people laugh. You're making a joke. This happened to me a lot. And I said, Dina, can I tell you something before you leave? You've got a big clown living in you that you're killing, or else it wouldn't have affected you that so much. You're so afraid of your clown. You're so afraid of your humor that you had to get up and walk out. I would suggest you come back in and learn about that shadow part of you that is driving you crazy, that somehow you couldn't get permission from whoever, I don't know what generation, they killed it, but it's dying. And when it starts to come alive, it scares you. She comes back in, she studies with me for 3 years, and she becomes one of the biggest stand-up comics in Israel. I swear to you. So I figured, okay, this has got potential. Now I'm getting invitations to go all over the world. I'm going to New Zealand. I'm going to, there's a Gestalt Institute of New Zealand. It's called GANZ, G-A-N-Z, Gestalt
Association of Australia and New Zealand. Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand. That was a great trip. And also in the Ukraine, as I said before, in Moscow, and those people are suffering so much now, and I know them, and I write to them, and I pray for them. And I got invitation to go to Greece as well, to go to Athens. And then I went back to New Orleans every year to give Anne a workshop of 2 or 3 days until she passed away about 7 or 8 years ago. And her son has taken over. He's a marvelous guy, marvelous man. What happened was I began to also get invitations from corporations, because the way I taught was so entertaining, it became stand-up. It was a stand-up routine. I mean, my Gestalt was stand-up routine. I would teach Gestalt as stand-up.
That makes absolute sense to me. So, okay.
Yeah, you know, and I would take the metaphors of Gestalt, and say, okay, this is the ego. What, and then I would have a whole scene, and then tell a story, and then go into shame, showing my own shame through a story. That, okay, this is what is called shame, and how I was shamed, and it was funny because I had this acting experience. So there's nothing I could tell. There was no story I could tell. There was no experience I could convey that wasn't funny. And if it wasn't funny, I had to make it funny, because when you're funny, people are engaged. I even had my groups automatically, improvisation, in stitches. They couldn't stop laughing. They were in tears. And even taking the things that were going on during the Gestalt dialogue were funny. I mean, it becomes so absurd. You know, but I didn't do it in a cruel way. Maybe I did, but it was like, okay, so you're going into a fish restaurant and you're ordering a pizza. Why do you do that? You know, do you know that you're in a fish restaurant ordering a pizza? Because all these guys, the same guys, are coming up. Of course, you're going to go to this bar. This is what's going to happen. So you're going anyway. So I got invitations from corporations. What happened was they wanted to have entertainment, and I would do an hour and a half of entertainment. And it was all about life and death. And it was all about Gestalt. And it was all about the trip I talk about taking from womb to tomb. Okay, this is how people live. This is how people live. This is what people do to themselves. This is people who make the choice of not doing that to themselves. This is where awareness comes in. And it's funny as hell. And I'm getting great money. So my agent comes to me and says, you got to stop doing Gestalt as a group and teaching these teachers. And I said, why? He said, because you're so much in demand that when I ask you to come and do a performance, you've got a group. Now the journey goes on like this. And I call it a journey, and I'm the journey, and things happen. I get a letter from the Board of Education that they no longer want me to teach this, what I'm teaching.
Oh.
The purpose was, I think, a political thing, which was, give you an example. The University of Tel Aviv wants to teach Gestalt. Lenny is teaching Gestalt. Everybody wants Lenny. Nobody is coming to Bar Ilan University, where we teach it. Nobody's coming to University of Haifa, where we teach it. Nobody's coming to the University of Beersheba, where we teach it. Everybody's going to Lenny. We got to get rid of Lenny. If Lenny wants to teach Gestalt, let him come to us. We will put him on the faculty, and he can teach Gestalt with us for how much we want to pay him, which is humiliating, the amount of money that they pay, and compared to the amount of money that I was making. So I was getting this message from God. I'm closing you down because I got something else for you to do. You're fighting it. You want to stay in Gestalt. I can't have you doing that anymore. I've got you on a different mission. I've got other people taking care of that. I need you to take care of this. In 2004, I closed my institute and went total show business, entertaining, doing Gestalt,
Okay.
all that I learned about in Gestalt, but doing it in a way that actually teaches people how to become aware and make new choices. Yesterday, I was in Singapore for the Toyota company, and I gave them 3 Gestalt principles about becoming aware and changing your response and changing your life, and how to laugh at yourself, and physically learning how to laugh at yourself. I said, you probably haven't laughed since kindergarten. And I went to Madan Kataria in India and studied and became a laughter leader. And then I went to California in San Francisco and learned with Steve Wilson to become a laughter leader. And then I went to Annette Goodhart, who is a psychiatrist who specializes in laughter as a healing device. And she gets people into where they were most abused and the tears, you have no idea. And she gets them into that pain and gets them to laugh. I watched her do it. And these people can't believe it. They're going through a story of abuse and they're laughing hysterically. And they go through a loss. They've lost their sister or their brother or whatever. And as she gets into this depth of pain and suffering, she gets into that laughter. She gets them to laugh. She teaches them physically how to get into that. Fake it till you make it, she calls it. So I had all these teachers. That's why I call it the journey. All these teachers of laughter. Dr. Madan Kataria stopped giving pills to people because he saw that what people needed to do was laugh because their bodies have chemistry. You have serotonin and you have things that make you depressed and you have things that make you happy, and laughter makes you happy. It gets the dopamine going. You do that a couple of times a day and you go out and you serve and do something good for someone else, or you make someone else happy, or you get somebody else to laugh. This automatically, we're wired as human beings to feel good about making other people feel good. This is their philosophy. So here I go from theater into Gestalt, into humor, into laughter teachers, into humor teachers. And then I joined a group called the AATH, the Association of Therapeutic Laughter, Association of Therapeutic, AATH, what is it? Association of Therapeutic Laughter.
They changed the letters just to confuse you.
AATH. No, therapeutic humor, excuse me. And these people are on a journey, and they recommended I go to see Patch Adams. You don't know if you ever saw the movie Patch Adams. It's a true story.
Yeah.
About a doctor who saw that people were depressed and the only thing the doctors did was give them pills. And he decided to open up a hospital for free called Gesundheit. And I met him, one of the most amazing people in the world. So authentic and so real and so sincere and such a mensch. And he developed in Israel, he came to Israel to develop what is called medical clowns. That the clowns actually are therapy for the children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know where we are in this interview. It's over an hour, I think, but I just wanted to get, I wanted to hear what you have to say about the journey. When you ask me, who am I, the journey, this is the journey. Mm-hmm. And I didn't plan anything. I was pulled along to this college, to this place, to this degree, to this black school, and get integrated to go back. It was just a journey, and I just followed the yellow brick road. And it took me to where I am right now. I'm 85 years old. Mm-hmm. And what happened was Corona. And I said, is that the end of my work? I won't be able to perform anymore. There are no more performances. My son is an actor, and he's, the theaters were closed for 2 years. Schools were closed for years. And all of a sudden, Zoom comes up. And I'm saying, this is a blessing. I started going back into Gestalt. I'm actually meeting people from Australia. Okay, I'm talking to you from Mexico, and it's like you're sitting right here with me in this room. It's like we're together. I never believed this could happen. And I'm also, I'm working with people from Australia, from Singapore, from yesterday was Singapore, Myanmar. I had a group of people from Coca-Cola from Myanmar. They said, just make us feel good. We're so depressed. There's terrible things happening in our country. Can you give us some tips how to get out of this mess? A way to think, a way to laugh. I physically got them to laugh. And you get mail back. Thank you for that laughter. I needed it so much. I taught it to my children. I taught it to my husband. I taught it to my team. Before we start a meeting, we all just laugh for 10 minutes for no reason. Okay, everybody, we're starting the meeting in 10 minutes. 1, 2, 3. Take a nice deep breath. Blow out the candle. How does that feel? Okay. So that's, I think, the story. That's the journey.
Mhm. Yeah, I didn't even ask a question, so this has been great. This has been, one of those self-driving cars of an interview. But I do have,
Alexis,
I was thinking of Tulsa, but that's okay. Tesla. So,
Tesla.
yeah, I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I don't know how relevant a lot of them are, up against the whole of everything that you put out there. Part of it is I'm interested in those little mechanisms of flip and change that happen. Um, and I got a full scholarship to be an artistic director at York University, and I said no, thank you, because it was one of those same things where it's like you're not going to be doing this anymore. You're going to be doing something else, and just understanding more and more and more levels of people, of culture, of societies, and you can't do that by staying in the same place.
Mhm.
It's remarkable. I mean, my own interest in humor is very much about that comedy tragedy bind and that human mechanism that just activates to be able to stay alive. And it's that absurd, dark, absolute emptiness. It's sort of like that sterile and fertile void of there's absolutely nothing, and that's hilarious. Very appreciative of what you've shared and how you've shared it. And I don't want to, ask the clever questions and, put little
I
bows on what you're saying.
yes, I understand what you're saying. I'm getting the feeling that you, by listening, identified with all those um, journeys and mini journeys in your life where you said yes and no, just knowing that this is what you're not going to be doing and this is what you are going to be doing. And that's the yellow brick road. I don't remember who said this, but if tragedy is walking into a manhole and breaking your leg, and comedy is falling into the manhole and dying, or death is easy, comedy is hard.
I say it's the same thing, different soundtrack.
Yeah, no, but I think that what you were doing was you were living through me your life story, because that's what stories do.
Mm-hmm.
Your story is my story, and my story is your story on many levels. It's not exactly the same thing, but when I said I knew that this is, and I know that this, and this is where I have to go, and this is where I have, and God sent me this message that I'm closing down, this is, these are things that I'm absolutely sure that you identified with.
Very much.
It was such a pleasure to meet you, and I'm so glad that you were my interviewee.
Who was what now?
You see where this is going?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's been a trip. It's been a trip.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, is it okay for you if we leave this conversation here? It seems like it has come.
I think it is. I think it's perfect. I'm touched by you. I am touched by you.
Thank you.
I will go so far as to say I love you, if you don't mind. And I'm so glad that you were the person. I mean, I've seen other people, and you're the heart, you're the soul, and I needed you.
Thank you. I think I needed a lot of things from this for myself as well from you. So, thank you.